What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Monster Games YouTube channel. I'm Lauren Kalil, and today we're going to help you debunk 5 myths when it comes to nutrition. Now, the CrossFit Open is right around the corner. We know that the finals for Monster Games aren't until July, but now is the time where you want to start thinking about your nutrition. And to help us out, we are teaming up with Apex Performance. Their team, it teaches you how to maximize your nutrition, training, and mindset so that you can be ready come game day. Now, one of the best things about them is they are client centric, and that is really going to put you first to help you reach whatever your specific goals are. You can head to their Instagram page, APEXPNC, and you can schedule a free consultation today. You want to get started. We know those qualifiers are happening. The Open is right around the corner, and July, the finals are going to be here before you know it. On today's episode, we have one of their experts who is going to debunk these myths with us. It is Brad Giglio. He is the founder of Apex. Brad, how is it going today?
I'm good. Thank you. I'm very good. I'm excited.
We got a lot to talk about, and kind of just off the top, the second weekend of July, that is when the finals are happening. But it's so important for people to start at least thinking about their nutrition now, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much of it is training focused, right? As CrossFitters, I own an affiliate. I'm in that mindset. We're talking about it now with our people. It's the idea of progression overload. Just like what we do with
Mhm.
training, mixed modal stuff, we have kind of like these steps that we take forward. Nutrition's the same, right? None of us are going to hit it right out the gate. So it's nice to have time in order to build, to learn, to systemize, to prioritize, and then learn how to execute those things so that way you can really feel it when it comes time to really hammer it down.
Okay, so we're going to go through now 5 myths. And some of these I'm excited because I know that I can learn a bit. And the first one is macros are king. Tell me about that one.
Yeah. So I mean, we've all been there. The idea is instead of macros being king, it's a little bit more like the mindset, right? It's
Mhm.
just like sometimes, especially in regards to when it comes to foundational energy expenditure, it's always going to be about your calories in, your calories out. You can hear people argue it back and forth till you're blue in the face, but so much of it is the idea of the overall intake that you're bringing in. Now, there's a couple things I talk about in regards to like this idea of macros and calories and all this other kind of stuff. Is calories are the foundation, right? They're the energy, the total energy that's coming in that your body's going to be allowed to expend. Macros make that intake a little bit more effective, and it can be a little bit more. It can help you be more compliant throughout your day. If you're somebody who eats low carbs and someone's telling you that you need to eat 300 grams of carbohydrates in order to get your calories, that's really counterintuitive to your natural eating style. So that's where we're talking about. Is like macros are definitely going to help you be more effective and efficient if they're right, but getting out of that fixed mindset and allowing yourself to maybe try different things within certain calorie ranges and then work on those macros will be a little bit of a better way to go.
So then when it comes to working with somebody who is a new client, maybe they've never worked with a nutritionist before, do you go right to macros or do you just have them try to hit a certain calorie count at first?
I mean, that's an awesome question. I mean, for the way we do it at Apex, everything is client centric. So really, I like to personally, and our coaches like to see a little bit more of like your flow, right? Because so much of us are obviously like full functioning adults. We have life, we have kids, we have, spouses. There's training, there's all this other kind of stuff that kind of gets in the way, and actually, the implementation of it tends to be the bigger piece. So personally, what I have found, if you give someone a macro count like right out the gate, they are now attempting to meet your expectation, right? Your
Mm.
expectation of what their intake needs to be, when in reality it should be flipped, right? So what I like to do is have people track stuff, give them a little bit of time, 7 to 10 days, do a food journal. Doesn't have to be anything too intense, and then start to dial it in and start to work with them and collab with them and how and what this feels like. Are they having energy dips? Are they hungry? How do they feel when they work out pre and post? And really start to help dial in the nutrition in regards to their lifestyle first, and then once that feels good and they're executing on it on a consistent basis, then the calories and the macros become more specified. Not that that you couldn't do that right out the gate, but in my opinion, even with like top end athletes, it does help to see the flow first and then apply the numbers.
Sure.
Yeah.
Myth number 2, I love this one. Fats are better than carbs. And especially with like the hype around keto, I'm sure
Yeah.
you get this one quite often.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I mean, it's like, I mean, I've been doing CrossFit for, man, since it was main site when I was in the army, which is way back when. Of course, over time, like the paleo thing really kicked in. That was really huge, where you'd
Mhm.
see tons of high fat intake and all sort of kind of stuff. And I'm not sure if you ever experienced with something, but even like back in the day when I first really started doing this, I mean, we would have athletes who would, they'd eat a jar of peanut butter because it
Oh,
was
yeah.
because it was paleo, right? And I'm like,
I
dude, that's
had
like
one in my gym bag.
I'm like, that's like 2,500 calories. And it's like, so if
Terrible.
you're, so, but the other thing is digestive efficiencies. Fat's really hard
Mm,
for your system to digest. It's not that water soluble, so it doesn't mix up that well. So, in regards to like fats being more important, obviously for certain people, again, I always go back to what's the intake like, and what are they going to be
mhm.
most effective at taking in. Do they like carbs more? Are they carb averse? Do they like fats more? But the idea like that fats are always going to be a better energy source. It's a lot better nowadays. Like you see a lot more people like embracing the idea of carbohydrates and like where they fall in like the whole scheme of, especially like mixed modal work that we do a lot in CrossFit, and like how that can actually be more dynamic when it comes to intense outputs. But you still see people really hang their hat on that. And if we're going back to the calorie thing, it's really easy to overdo your calories in regards to maybe like where your average is at with fats. Not necessarily a bad thing. It's not like your fats are bad, but the idea of there should still be a balance with it, right? And understanding what that does. If you're overeating in fats, there's a really good chance that you're not able to give yourself the ability to digest that stuff as efficiently as you could. There's nothing wrong. It could take you longer. It could, but it's more like the mindset of like villainizing something. Rather, it's like let's a little bit more objective and maybe try differing amounts. What makes the most sense? What feels good here? Are you eat too much? Do you feel hyper full? Maybe you don't want to eat other foods throughout the day because your fat intake earlier in the day was heavier. So there's a lot that kind of goes into it, but that's really where we want to at least begin the discussion, is that not one thing is going to be better than another.
I will never forget the first time that I actually weighed out what 1 tablespoon of peanut butter was and how disappointed and
It's so
how
upsetting. It's so
it's
upsetting.
so
You're like,
sad.
this is it. You're
And then
like,
it
this is it.
reminds you, like, that maybe I thought 1 serving was 4 to 5 tablespoons growing up.
Well, it's so easy, and it's like it's again nothing bad about it, but it's very calorie
Yeah.
dense. So for an elite athlete, is that a big deal? Not really, because they're training 6 hours a day, maybe more. But for the person who is maybe highly competitive, they're going into the games. Maybe the monster games was like their first qualifying. They're like looking to push,
Mhm.
or the open. They have kind of like this mindset around it. I just encourage people to think about it, ask questions, and try, and don't necessarily lean into a narrative where one thing is more important than another. Like we're all individuals and our bodies work very differently. So that idea is really where I kind of come out with, it's like, fats aren't always the biggest thing, because we just hear it so much. So that's really where I kind of like just like, let's pump the brakes. Let's talk about it a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's get into myth number 3. The last meal before you train or compete is the best.
This is a big one. So you will hear, have you ever seen do you watch The Office? Have you seen The Office?
Yeah, of course.
Do you see the doing
That's
they
actually
what
one
they
thing I have seen on TV.
where they do the 5K, and Michael eats
Oh,
like
yes,
he's
great
like, I gotta carb
episode.
up, right? I gotta carb up. He eats like
Yeah,
all like
yeah.
the fettuccine and stuff like that. It's all like, and he's like gets through and he's just like feel like he's gonna like yak, right? Obviously that's
Yeah.
an exaggerated version, but it's the idea of your body is not an immediate system, right? It takes time. So if you're off on your eating. Traveling for competitions is a huge one. Like any of the athletes
Mhm.
that I work with that go to Wadapalooza, they go to the games, they go to anything else that's these like larger competitions. We really should be looking at 24 to 48 hours out. I mean, obviously we want to be consistent up until that point, but that really sets up your system to be in a little bit of a better space to be able to accept those things, right? So if you're had a crap travel day, you really haven't eaten anything, you're competing in 36 hours, loading up the night prior to the competition isn't going to be as beneficial as a lot of people think. So really, we want to take that into consideration and think about like your body's still a system. Like we have glycogen stores that we got to look at and all that kind of stuff. And of course, you can replenish those things within a fairly short period of time. Doesn't take a ton. Um, but that idea of again being more proactive in your mindset and having things that you can focus on to execute days out will really give you a better line of success. It's the same thing with sleep. If your sleep is kind of crap leading days up into this, and I'm sure you could probably talk about this because you travel so much. If
Oh,
it's
yeah.
if you're doing that, your body starts to need and want different things, and
Mhm.
it can't prioritize things as well as it wants to. It can't digest as efficiently if you're overly tired. You're going to crave higher complex carbohydrates that are fast digesting that may not be great for competition based energies and that whole thing. So a lot of it is like I just really try to encourage people to think it through. Like we don't ever really want to do anything last minute when it comes to energy output, right? There's short things, right? Small stuff that we can do. You see people do the fruits and the candies and things like that. That can bring your blood sugar up, which is good. That's helpful. But in reality, if you want to have like a successful multi-day competition, you need to be planning for multi-day eating.
And I think that point number 4, myth number 4, goes hand in hand with that. You can hydrate in the moment.
Yeah. So again, so many people think of hydrating as like drinking water, right? Even like top end athletes are, I drink enough water, I drink a gallon a day. It's like, okay, yeah, that's great. So much of it, and this you see this now too with like the with the kick with like electrolytes, right? Super
Mhm.
important. It's not how much like water you take in, it's how much water is your body actually storing and able to have utilized, right? So like storing water in your muscles and all sort of kind of stuff. So with a multi-day competition, especially the game or the open's a little bit different. Unless you're doing unless you're like one of those people that like to redo workouts. If you're putting that kind of output out, like if you're a redoer, then you got to be aware of this. But
Guilty.
you, yeah, once you kind of get that spot depleted, especially in a multi-day competition, like you can't just get it back. Like you can't just like rehydrate yourself like on the flip of a switch for a couple of reasons. Stress, right? Your hormone levels and stress is getting pushed all across the place. You're nervous, you're anxious, all those kind of things are going on. Um, High end muscle contraction, high end volume contractions on the muscles. You're using so much of it, especially if you're doing it at the Monster Games where it's hot as crap, like in
Mhm.
July. Like
Yep.
that, yeah, it's something that needs to be considered that you can't just make that up in real time. Like you can't, you can get yourself to a point, but the idea there is like it's kind of like diminishing returns because within the next few hours you're going to be doing something else that is going to be demanding that of your body, and your body just can't replenish those things that fast. So the idea of, again, excuse me, multi-day like layering of like hydration, beginning to increase your micronutrients, your phytonutrients, if that's something that you're aware of, lightly salting your food, using things like element as you're going into the competition, and not just starting it like the night before or the morning of. You're going to have way more success in terms of like how your body is feeling in that regard. So again, it goes into more of like a proactive mindset, but that's where like, oh, I can just, if I'm dehydrated, I can catch up right now. It's like, no, that doesn't.
So
Once it's gone, it's gone.
even if, because I know myself, my kind of like pre-workout or gym, one of 4 gym beverages
Hmm.
is I have hydro salt or, like you said, elements, some kind of electrolyte packet that I'm putting in my water. Are you saying that that's not actually replenishing me and rehydrating me and giving me the things I need in the moment? It's more of like a long-term plan?
No, I mean you're gonna get some of it, but if you think that you're gonna drink something and in like 30 minutes it's gonna be
Mm.
100% accessible. It just doesn't work like that. So that idea is like it's better to do something than nothing, right? But I would rather see someone have a larger established plan where they're doing those things. If you drink something like that and you're doing a good job, so like you're eating whole foods, you're getting plenty of colors, um, your macros and all that kind of good stuff. Like you're eating as you should. When you go to drink that prior to your training session or the competition, it's going to be more of a top off where you're going to be able to utilize it at some point where you're not falling so far behind that it's going to be a detriment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
No,
like it's like
that's
when
helpful.
you take it in, of course it's gonna there's gonna be percentages that it's going to be beneficial, and everybody's gonna be a little bit different. But I talked with like my games athletes. I'm like,
Mhm.
why risk that? Like why?
Yeah.
Like I'd rather see people take it in as a part of a long-term established plan, not neglect the pieces prior and then think that, oh, I'm going to do this now and it's going to be good.
Mm.
Yeah.
Good.
So
I
yeah,
like that.
so I mean, like what you're doing is great. Like that's you should do those things. I have my athletes do those things, but it's like it's more of like a hey, we're adding to and it's in addition to as opposed to hey, we're playing catch up.
Yeah, we can't just keep putting Band-Aids on things.
You said it way better than I did. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yep.
I love Band-Aids.
Yeah. Exactly. Like especially like right
Which
now, like my daughter's like it's bluey band-aids.
oh, yeah, the ones with characters and
Yeah.
colors, there's
Hmm.
tie-dyed ones, we love
Yep.
those.
Yep.
Just patch them all up on me to
Hmm.
make me ready to compete. And finally, myth number 5, I would say this one surprised me the most. Plan out every meal. You actually say you shouldn't do that for game day.
From a mental standpoint, especially with multi-day, multi-event competitions, the
Mhm.
reason being is not that eating is not a bad thing, right? But the idea of you're going to be able and willing to eat those things after
Mm.
a hard lined event is probably unlikely. And what happens a lot is it's more like a mental depreciation, like, oh, I didn't eat my numbers, that's why I did X. It's like if you talk to any of the nutrition guys or people across the space that work with athletes, it's like a lot of it becomes more of a liquid diet. The fact that they're going to be hitting numbers with their protein is probably not going to happen, right? Because it's
Yeah,
hard to digest, it's hard to like take in, and your body's ramped up all the time. So if you go into the day trying to execute your training macros on competition day, you're leaving yourself into a space where you're going to probably be disappointed. What I talk about a lot with athletes is we look at book ending our calories, right?
mhm,
So what can I take in the night before and the morning of that's going to like get me in line for, to carry me through things like that as best we can. And then we always talk about uh minimums in regards to like between events. It's like we have to get at least this. And that could just be simply sucking on an orange slice. Like it doesn't have to be like this thing, but the idea of like, how are you feeling? What are you willing to do? If you're forcing it, you've probably had talks with people behind at the competition or at like any of the games. Was like their appetite is like nothing. Some of them will go
yeah,
nothing. They won't eat anything all day, and like they're just literally drinking their calories into some regards. So that's more of the lines like, let's have a plan, but sometimes deviating from the plan can be a part of the plan, right? So it's
sure.
like knowing that you're going to be doing a heavy back squat or the CrossFit total. If you think you're going to eat 8 ounces of chicken and and 80 grams of white rice
Yeah.
an hour prior to that because you just did an event 40 minutes ago, not going to happen, right? So
Think
it's more,
again.
yeah, it's more along the lines of like, what, where are my tolerances, and what do I need in order to be successful, right? And
Mm,
that's really where I come in with our higher end athletes and people when they're going to go to like a multi-day competition. It's like, let's talk about minimums. What do we need to get back to neutral, right? So we just did this big old event. What do we need to get us back feeling good or even just confident, right? Confident in my abilities to be able to go into the next thing. And that's really where, when we talk about tracking or having like a plan, that's the plan. The focus is you executing the event And that's not always eating a big freaking rice bowl.
Doesn't always work.
No, no, it's tough. No, it's one of those things. I mean, you could talk to anybody like in the back of the games. They're like, "Hey, I want this." You go get it.
Yeah.
You bring it to them, and they're like,
Just
they taste
kidding.
it, and they're like, "Never mind." So it's a real thing. So just kind of being aware of it is empowering to athletes, and they don't feel like they're failing a part of the plan.
Well, Brad Giglio, thank you so much for debunking these 5 nutrition myths. This is just one of a 3-part series that we're going to be doing together. We're going to be talking about what you can do right now for your nutrition to prepare for competition day. And then we will also talk about eating to perform. But if you want to get more information, maybe you're looking to hire a coach, you can go to apexpn.com. You can check out all of their information there and get yourself ready for game day. July will be here before you know it, and we hopefully can help you along the way. Thanks again, Brad.
Thanks.